Now, I'll be one of the first people to admit that we have a lot of gadgets in our kitchen, probably more than we need. And so I feel like a little bit of an aficionado when I have this list of top kitchen gadgets for your homestead cooking from scratch kitchen. I'm Kelsey from RoughAndTumbleFarmhouse.com, and every single week I share new videos about farming, family food, and fortitude here on our 5-acre homestead in northern Minnesota. Now, when I say gadget, actually, a lot of the things I'm going to share with you aren't really technical little gadgets. They're just tools that I found to be really, really useful in your home. So the first one on the list is this rack. Now, this can be used for cooling cookies. It can sit right on top of your sink. It has these awesome little grippers on the end, so it can make basically an entire other countertop. The whole thing just rolls up really, really slick like this, so it's small and easy to store. I use this thing all the time, like I said, whether it's cookies or just making extra counter space. This thing is really, really handy to have. Next on the list, this was actually a freebie that I got from a jar and bottle company when I was ordering some jars for making balms and salves and that sort of thing. This is just a little jar gripper. So if you have a jar that's really hard to open, you can just grab onto the top of the jar with this, and it'll allow you to grip it much better, and it's a lot easier to open jars. So I'm not having to run and get my husband or beating on the lids with a butter knife or anything like that. This little gripper usually gets the job done. The next item on the list is this slick little garlic tube. Now, this thing doesn't look like it'll be that impressive, but it's incredible. All you do is pop in a clove of garlic, and then you press down on your countertop and roll it back and forth, and the garlic will come out with all of its skins off. I don't really understand exactly why it works so well. It does have little ridges inside, but it is incredible, and I use this thing all the time, and it's very, very inexpensive. Next on the list, we're going to move over to knives. I have a knife sharpener that I got. This I think was about $8, and I wish I had bought this thing years ago. I've always had one of those kind of long metallic knife sharpeners that come with your knife block that you hold, and you do your knives that way. I have never been able to get a good sharp knife from that. I've watched YouTube videos on how to do it. I never get the angle quite right. I don't know why I'm messing it up, but I do not ever get a actually sharp knife out of that. So I went and bought this slick little sharpener here. I'll show you how it works. All you have to do is run the knife through the coarse setting a couple times and then through the fine setting a couple times, and you end up with a super sharp knife. And like I said, I wish I had bought this thing years ago because it is so handy to have. Next up on the list are my two favorite spatulas. The first one, this is the OXO brand. It's just a little thin guy. It has a very thin piece of metal inside and then the silicone cover. This is my go-to spatula for just about everything because it is so, you can see how super duper thin this is. And so it's really, really handy for getting under food. And because it's flexible too, if you want, you can use it to scrape out bowls. This little guy is an absolute godsend. I love this spatula. My next favorite spatula is one that you can maybe find one like it at a store. I got this at a garage sale. Actually, they were selling a bunch of kind of neat antique and vintage stuff. This spatula could be used as a weapon. It is so, it honestly practically disappears. Look at that, because that's how thin it is. And you could seriously cut a person with enough force behind it. This is just paper thin. And if you're making stuff like home fries out of potatoes or something like that, this can really, it cuts underneath absolutely anything. And so this spatula, it looks almost like the thing you'd use for like putting frosting on a cake. I really don't know what it was originally made for or used for, but just a really good thin metal spatula is also a must-have for your kitchen. Next, this is another item that they probably make them new, but this is another vintage find. I saw when I was super into watching Julia Child cooking videos. She had this type of sifter, and so this one, it holds probably about 2 cups of whatever you're sifting. You can hold it in one hand. It's a lot easier to use, like kind of that big one like this. This one, you just squeeze like this and it sifts. And so this is one you'd want to look for at a thrift store or antique store or something. This is from the Foley, it says Foley Sifter Minneapolis. And so I was looking, and I think these are from the 50s, but it's still, I mean, it does the trick. It works well. It's really lightweight. So just these nice little one-handed sifters, I think, are way easier to use than the big ones where you're like this or the ones where you're cranking. So another one for the list. Another item that I really like having in my kitchen is a pie shield. So this is just a silicone ring that you can set around the top of your pie crusts or your quiches or whatever it is that you're making in the oven, and that will prevent the crust from burning. So if you need to cook it a little bit longer because your middle isn't set, but your crust is already done, this will protect your crust and keep it crisp, but stop it from getting burnt. Just 2 more items left on my kitchen list. The next one is a heavy one, and that is my cast iron Dutch oven. This thing is fantastic. You can use it for making your soups, your stews. You can slow roast something in the oven in this bad boy. You can make your sourdough bread with it. It's really all purpose. It's heavy duty. This thing is going to outlive me, and it's just really great to have in your kitchen, even though it is a little bit big and definitely super heavy. Last but not least on the list, especially if you grow a lot of your own herbs, I recommend having a pair of herb scissors. So these guys are kind of very Edward Scissorhandsy looking. So it's basically what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pairs of scissors in one, and then it has a little shield cover thing here. So if you have fresh herbs, or even once you've got dried herbs, if they're whole, you could put them in a jar and cut them up with this. It'll go way faster than trying to do it with a single pair of scissors or by hand. And then also the cover has these little grabbers in here. So because especially when you're doing fresh herbs, they get kind of jammed in here in between the blades, and you just take this and slide it through and it pulls all the fresh herbs out. So again, not super expensive, but really handy to have in your kitchen. One last thing I also would not be without is a magnetic knife strip. Oh my gosh, not having to deal with the knife block on the counter frees up so much space. You can put your scissors up here, all your knives, so you're not having to grab out different handles until you find the right one, because you can see exactly the knife you're going for. Magnetic knife strip. I couldn't leave this one out. Okay, so that is my list of top 10 kitchen items. Please let me know if you have some items in your kitchen that you use all the time in your from scratch cooking. I would love to hear about them and fill my drawers with more nifty things. Thank you so much for watching. You can always find new videos here every single week about farming, family food, and fortitude here at our Rough and Tumble farmhouse.